PS5 on the PlayStation 4's YouTube channel. Well, PlayStation, not PlayStation 4, sorry. Just cause, you know. Oh, I'm getting excited.
I know what's happened in Steamy.
Is Jimmy on?
No, Steamy.
No, is Jimmy on though?
No.
Oh, is Niall on? At least.
Yeah, but...
Well, do you want to tell him about the PS5 review? Or do you want
yeah,
to...
but I've invited him, but he's not joining.
In 6 minutes, guys, we're going to actually get a reveal about the PS5. Actually, do you know what I'm going to do for a minute? I'm going to pause this stream for a while, and I'm going to record the review on my... Movian.
Oh my
Hold on, guys.
Fortnite, can you stop trying to keep me on? Got killed by someone who's only started last season. I'm gonna report them. Offensive name.
Oh my god, I cannot believe this. I cannot believe this. I can actually not believe this.
Up with a name like that.
Hey guys, the PS5 is out. Well, it's not out, I guess you could say. But guys, there is a premiere. And yes, guys, I am streaming on my PlayStation 4 and my phone. This is actually insane. Some guy in the chat said I'm waiting for PS6.
Oh well, too late.
Oh my gosh, this is actually insane. Hi. 5 minutes! Oh my god, Liam. Are you gonna watch this?
Yeah, I might as well just go Fortnite.
It's on the PlayStation YouTube channel.
Let me just pull out my mic.
Woo! PlayStation 5 reveal.
Switch back to my other mic.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Oh, I guess you could say my money's spoken. If you guys don't get the joke, I mean, rest in peace, my money. See all the dislikes in this video? It's all the Xbox players. Hi. Liam. See all the dislikes. Are you watching it? No.
I've searched it up.
Just search up PlayStation YouTube channel.
It is, and it doesn't tell me how long it is.
What does? What? To the video?
Yeah.
It's in 4 minutes in mine.
No, like how many minutes it will be, the actual video.
No, because it's no premiered yet. It premieres in 3 minutes. Liam, you excited? I'm saving this video to watch later. Oh, there's 218,553 people waiting for the premiere to happen.
Do you know WWE's Twitter is hacked?
Oh, I wonder if they'll tell us the price and some games that are happening on it.
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Oh, don't go off the video though, because it'll take longer for it to load.
If it's not a long time,
It's only 3 minutes.
no, it's not a long time, like,
To finish.
I think we'll just click on and watch it later.
Oh!
Just so I don't have to put up with watching
Why are loads of my pals playing Fortnite right now? They should be actually watching the video. I can understand if you're doing it a bit. I hope they reveal some games that are going to be on it, like Fortnite or Minecraft. Half the games are probably going to get shut down. So now what we've got is some leaks online about the controller, a website, a video, concepts about the thing, some ideas for games that are on the thing, the startup and all that, and if they should have a PlayStation app. Is this real though? In like a minute or so. Oh, what? Mine's is still a minute. Oh, joking. So yes guys, you have 60 seconds to see what's actually going to happen. Oh my god, I'm actually recording this with a face cam. That's just one of my...
It should be premiering now. I'm just doing a back out.
It'll start at 6 o'clock. No, it should be premiering at 4 o'clock, but you know how there's a timer? It'll begin shortly! Oh my god. Usually they're short. I watched one with my pal Jamie. Everyone else, Liam, you would know. We watched our Conspiring Theories Odd Ones Out video together. Is there a timer or not? No, don't, because that will slow it down for you. See, if you want to skip the timer, don't, because that will just restart it. 1 minute, it's going to start. No, I mean, guys, if you didn't know, they've also got like PlayStation 6 to 10 like sorted, leaked online. 6 o'clock, it's 4 o'clock. Wait a minute, Liam, it should happen soon. But it is. Have you got the timer? How have you got it? Okay. Ooh, how many minutes for you? Sorry. I don't know how many it says. Mine's is 101 minute and 41 actually, that's surprising. Yay! It's gonna be a reveal. I can't believe they're actually revealing this like a couple of months early. No, like honestly, it's absolutely fantastic. Let's go, man! This is legendary. This is the best moment of my life. Aye. Don't spoil anything. Oh my god. We don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. Shh. Shh. Wait. Go!
Hi. Unfortunately, we had to cancel the talk that we had planned for GDC. But we do have some super exciting news about PS5, and who better to bring that to you than the one and only Mark Cerny. Without further ado, over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Jim. There will be lots of chances later on this year to look at the PlayStation 5 games. Today, I want to talk a bit about our goals for the PlayStation 5 hardware and how they influenced the development of the console. I think you all know I'm a big believer in console generations. Once every 5 or
There's
6
about
or
3
7
different
years, a
PlayStation
console arrives
hardware.
with substantially new capabilities. There's a lot of learning by the game developers, hopefully not too overwhelming.
The PS2 one
And
does
soon
look
there's
pretty
games
dope.
that could never have been created before. Now, it used to be that as a console designer, you'd somehow intuit what would be the best set of capabilities for the new console, and then build it in complete secrecy. For the PlayStation consoles, that period lasted through PlayStation 3, a powerful and groundbreaking console, but also one that caused quite a lot of heartache, as it was initially difficult to develop games for. So, starting with PlayStation 4, we've taken a different approach, roughly centered around 3 principles. The first of these is listening to the developers, which is to say that a lot of what we put into a console derives directly from the needs and aspirations of the game creators. We definitely do have some ideas of our own, but at the core of our philosophy for designing consoles is that game players are here for the fantastic games.
I know.
Which is to say that game
Hope they
creators
would do
matter.
that.
Anything we can do to make life easier for the game creators or help them realize their dreams, we will do. So, about once every 2 years, I take a tour of the industry. I go to the various developers and publishers, sit down, and discuss how they're doing with the current consoles and what they'd like to see in future consoles. This requires weeks on the road, as reaching the bulk of the game creators involves talking to well over 100 people at something like 24 publishers and developers. And it is incredibly valuable. By the way, the feature most requested by the developers
What's lesson?
was an SSD, which we were very happy to put in the hardware, but a lot of problem solving was required. I'll be doing a deep dive on the SSD and surrounding systems later on in this talk. It's also key to make a generational leap while keeping the console sufficiently familiar to game developers. I think about this in terms of balancing evolution and revolution. Now, with PlayStation 1, 2, and 3, the target was a revolution each time with a brand new feature set. That was great in many ways, but time for the developers to get up and running got longer with each console. In the past, I've called this timed triangle.
Liam, some people don't have patience in the chat.
To be clear, I'm not talking about time to make a game. Developers will be ambitious, and it may take them 6 years or so to realize their vision. What I'm talking about is that
It took the PlayStation 3 about 6 to 12 months for the hardware, I think, or the actual thing.
Running and trying to.
That's pretty impressive.
On the other hand, if we're trying to reduce that dead time to 0, that means the hardware architecture can't change at all. We're handcuffed. We need to judge for each feature what value it adds and whether it's worth the increase in developer time needed to support it. So with PlayStation 4, we were able to strike a pretty good balance between performance and familiarity. We got required learning back to PlayStation 1 levels. With PS5, the GPU was definitely the area that we felt the most tension between adding new features and keeping a familiar programming model. Ultimately, I think we've ended up with something
come on.
of getting up to speed. That feels like we're striking about the right balance. I'll go into a bit more detail later today about our philosophy with the GPU and the specific feature set that resulted from it. It's also very important for us, as the hardware team, to find new dreams, by which I mean something other than CPU performance, GPU performance, and the amount of RAM. The increase in graphics performance over the
Liam, I
past
think this is going to be
decades
quite
has been
long.
astonishing, but there are other areas in which we can innovate and provide significant value to the game creators, and through them, the players. That's why the SSD was very much on our list of directions to explore, regardless of what came out of the conversation.
I'm gonna set my controller down.
Publishers.
Let charge for a while.
The biggest feature in this category is the custom engine for audio. That's today's final topic. The push for vastly improved audio, and in particular 3D audio, isn't something that came out of the developer meetings. It's much more the case that we had a dream of what might be possible 5 years from now, and then worked out a number
Well,
of
we don't
steps
know.
we could take to set us on that path. So here again are the 3 principles. The first being enabling the desires of developers to drive the hardware design. To me, the SSD really is the key to the next generation. It's a game changer. And it was the #1 ask from developers for PlayStation 5. As in, we know it's probably impossible, but can you put an SSD in it? That was a discussion we were also having internally. It was clear that the presence of a hard drive in every PlayStation 4 was having a positive impact. A lot of things that would simply have been impossible at Blu-ray disc speeds were now possible. At the same time, though, in 2015 and 2016, when we were having these conversations, developers were already banging up against the limits of the hard drive, and a lot of developer time was being spent designing around slow load speeds. I want to focus in on just one number here, which is how long it takes to load a gigabyte of data from a hard drive. The difficulty being that hard drives are neither particularly fast
And
nor
a red.
flexible.
And
If all your
100.
data is in one block, which is frankly not
And the outer edge.
you can load 50 to 100 megabytes a second, depending on where the data is located on the hard drive. Let's assume it's on the outer edge, which means loading a gigabyte takes 10 seconds. If you compress your game package,
Why are
you can
people so
fit
not
more
patient
data
in
on
this?
the disk, and also effectively boost your hard
This is
drive
important information that they'll need.
We support zlib decompression on PlayStation 4 that gets you something like 50%
Everyone's calling this guy a boomer and all that. I feel
50%
bad.
higher effective read speed. Unfortunately, though, it's highly likely that your data is scattered around in various files on the hard drive, as well as sourced from multiple locations within those files. So lots of seeks are needed at 2 to 50-ish milliseconds each. My rule of thumb is that the hard drive is spending 2/3 of its time seeking, and only 1/3 of its time actually loading data. Putting all of that together, a gigabyte is very roughly 20 seconds to load from a hard drive. Now, a gigabyte is not much data. Games are using 5 or 6 gigabytes of RAM on PlayStation 4, so boot times and load times can get pretty grim. Or to put that differently, as a player, you wait for the game to boot, wait for the game to load, wait for the level to reload every time you die, and you wait for what is euphemistically called fast travel. And all of that leads to the dream. What if we could have not just an SSD, but a blindingly fast SSD? If we could load 5 gigabytes a second from it, what would change? Now, SSD
They already have teased Marvel Spider-Man if it was on the PS5.
If you have a 5 gigabyte a second,
They might skip the cutscenes.
from 1,000 different locations in that second, pretty much at speed.
Aye.
As for time to load a gigabyte, this is next gen we're talking about, so memory is bigger. Instead, we should be asking how long to load 2 gigabytes. And the answer is about 1/4 of a second. I mean, that's amazing. We're talking 2 orders of magnitude, meaning very roughly 100 times faster.
See if the little kids in this are bored. Why don't they just watch it?
The game boots in a second. There are no load screens. The game just fades down while loading a half dozen gigabytes and fades back up again. Same for a reload. You're immediately back in the action after you die. And fast travel becomes so fast it's blink and you miss it. As game creators, we go from trying to distract the player from how long fast travel is taking, like those Spider-Man subway rides, to being
Did you see that? They made a reference Spider-Man subway ride, so you jinxed it.
Pretty cool, right? But for me, this is not the primary reason to change from a hard drive to an SSD.
Well, let's make a Batman
The
reference.
reason for an ultra-fast SSD is that it gives the game designer freedom. Or to put that differently, with a hard drive, the 20 seconds that it takes to load a gigabyte can sabotage the game that the developer is trying to create. I think
What?
almost all of us in the room have experienced this, maybe in different ways. Say we're making an adventure game and we have 2 rich environments where we each want
Maybe.
models to film.
Maybe this can be like a
What you can do
new
as long
Oscott
as you
building that they're
have a
building.
staircase or elevator ride or a windy corridor where you can ditch the old assets and then take 30 seconds or so to load the new assets. Having a 30-second elevator ride is a little extreme. More realistically, we probably chop the world into a number of smaller pieces and then do some calculations with sight lines and run speeds like we did for Haven City when we were making Jak 2. The game is 20 years old, but not much has changed since then. All those twisty passages are there for a reason. There's a whole subset of level design dedicated to this sort of work, but still, it's a giant distraction for
Some random game that's been 20 years old.
So when
It was released in 2000 then.
part of the reason for that 5 gigabyte a second target was
It stands for Joker Combat.
but also part of the reason for that target was streaming. As in, what if the SSD is so fast that as the player is turning around, it's possible to load textures for everything behind the player in that split second? If you figure that it takes half a second to turn, that's 4 gigabytes of compressed data you can load. That sounds about right for next gen. Anyway, back to the hard drive. Another strategy for increasing effective read speed is to make big sequential chunks of data.
You're
For
telling
example,
me?
we might group all the data together for each city block. That removes most of the seeks, and the streaming gets faster. But there's a downside too, which is that frequently used data is included in many chunks and therefore is on the hard drive many, many times. Marvel's Spider-Man uses this strategy.
Listen!
though it works
Wait, is there
well
something to do with
for
Marvel's
increasing the
Spider-Man?
speed. There's a massive duplication as a result. Some of the objects like mailboxes or news racks are on the hard drive 400 times. What I'm describing here are things that cramp a creative director's style. Either level design gets a little bit boring in places, or the data is duplicated so many times that it no longer fits on the Blu-ray disc. And you end up with hard limits on the player's run speed or driving speed. The player can't go faster than the load speed from the hard drive. And finally, I'm sure many of you have noticed that after a patch download, the PlayStation 4 will sometimes take a long time to install the patch. That's because when just part of a file has been changed, the new data can be downloaded pretty quickly. But before the game boots up, a brand new file has to be constructed that includes the changed portion. Otherwise, every change would add a seek or two. Even so, you can occasionally see this happening on game titles. They start to hitch once they get patched enough. With an SSD, though, no seeks, so no need to make brand new files with changes incorporated into them, which means no installs as you know them today. There's yet one more benefit, which is that system memory can be used much more efficiently. On PlayStation 4, game data on the hard drive feels very distant and difficult to use. By the time you realize you need a piece of data, it's much too late to go out and load it. So system memory has to contain all of the data that could be used in the next 30 seconds or so of gameplay. That means a lot of the 8 gigabytes of system memory is idle. It's just waiting there to be potentially used. On PlayStation 5, though, the SSD is very close to being like more RAM. Typically, it's fast enough that when you realize you need a piece of data, you can just load it from the SSD and use it. There's no need to have lots of data parked in system memory waiting to potentially be used. A different way of saying that is that most of RAM is working on the game's behalf. This is one of the reasons that 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 feels right for PlayStation 5. The presence of the SSD reduces the need for a massive intergenerational increase in size. So, back to the dream of the SSD. Here's the set of targets. Boot the game in a second. No load screens. Design freedom, meaning no twisty passages or long corridors.
They said no load screens, so that means like Marvel's Spider-Man will just straight get to the menu?
Those patch installs go away. The reality, though, is that the SSD is just one piece of the puzzle. There's a lot of places where bottlenecks can occur in between the SSD and the game code that uses the data. You can see this on PlayStation 4. If I use an SSD with 10 times the speed of a standard hard drive, I probably see only double the loading speed, if that. For PlayStation 5, our goal was not just that the SSD itself be 100 times faster. It was that game loads and streaming would be 100 times faster. So every single potential bottleneck needed to be addressed. And there are a lot of them. Let's look at check-in and what happens when its overhead gets 100 times larger. Conceptually, check-in is a pretty simple process. Data is loaded into system memory from the hard drive or SSD. It's examined, a few values are tweaked to check it in, and then it's moved to its final location. At the SSD speeds we're talking about, that last part, moving the data, meaning copying it from one location to another, takes roughly an entire next-gen CPU core. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. If all the overheads get 100 times larger, that will cripple the frame rate as soon as the player moves.
I feel bad for the guy who's presenting this.
Coming off the SSD.
Is this live? Or, you know what I mean? Is this recorded like a couple of hours ago?
Flash controller and a number of custom units in our main chip. The flash controller in the SSD was designed for smooth and bottleneck-free operation, but also...
I know, but...
For example, there are...
You know how it's a review right now?
When reading from the SSD. Priority is very
Is it actually like, are they recording it right now, or is it already been recorded?
In the world, and the game requesting a few gigabytes of textures. And while those textures,
See, if it isn't, these kids are obviously dumb to realise he can't answer.
words. Having multiple priority levels lets the audio for those dying words get loaded immediately. On one side, that flash controller connects to the actual flash dies that supply the storage. To reach our bandwidth target of 5 gigabytes a second, we ended up with a 12-channel interface. 8 channels wouldn't be enough. The resulting bandwidth we've achieved is actually 5.5 gigabytes a second. With a 12-channel interface, the most natural size that emerges for an SSD is 825 gigabytes. The key question for us was, is that enough? I mean, it's tempting to add more, but Flash certainly doesn't come cheap, and we have a responsibility to our gaming audience to be
Around 500 to 400 probably.
in the console. Ultimately, we resolved this question by looking at the play patterns of a broad range of gamers. We examined
I feel like around 500 and
they were playing
£30 actually.
weekend or a week or a month, and whether that set of games would fit properly on the SSD. We were able to establish that the friction caused by reinstalling,
I mean, they can't just reveal it now.
and so we locked in on
I think they'll reveal it in the summer holidays.
while also preparing multiple strategies so that those who want more storage can add it. I'll go through the details in a moment. Back to the flash controller. On the other side, it connects to our main custom chip via 4 lanes of Gen 4
See if these people are sleeping, go take a nap.
custom chip.
No.
Look, I'm just waiting for the next porting part for it. Like how to transfer your data on this one. Whoa! But push.
Wait, is that maybe a tease for Fortnite? Is that maybe a tease for Fortnite?
What?
Was
Tracking.
already becoming a de facto industry standard. Half of the teams I talked to were either using it or getting ready to evaluate it. So we hustled and built a custom decompressor into the I/O unit, one capable of handling over 5
Do
gigabytes
they have
of
to,
Kraken
they've still
format
not
input
figured out the
data a
idea what
second.
they're going to do for it though?
After decompression, that typically becomes 8 or 9 gigabytes. But the
So,
unit itself
I'm
is
not
capable
gonna
of
watch
outputting
any
as
more
much as
shows.
22 gigabytes a second if the data happen to compress particularly well. By the way, in terms of performance, that custom decompressor equates to 9 of our Zen 2 cores. That's what it would take to decompress the Kraken stream with a conventional CPU. There's a lot more in the custom I/O unit, including a dedicated DMA controller. The game can direct exactly where it wants to send the data coming off of the SSD. This equates to another Zen 2 core or 2 in terms of its copy performance. Its primary purpose is to remove check-in as a bottleneck. There's 2 dedicated I/O coprocessors and a large RAM pool. These aren't Zen 2 cores. They're there principally to direct the variety of custom hardware around them. One of the coprocessors is dedicated to SSD I/O. This lets us bypass traditional file I/O and its bottlenecks when reading from the SSD. The other is responsible for memory mapping, which I know doesn't sound like anything related to the SSD, but a lot of developers map and remap memory as part of file I/O, and this too can become a bottleneck. There are coherency engines to assist the coprocessors. Coherency comes up a lot in places. Probably the biggest coherency issue is stale data in the GPU caches. Flushing all of the GPU caches whenever the SSD is read is an unattractive option. It could really hurt the GPU performance. So we've implemented a gentler way of doing things, where the coherency engines inform the GPU of the overwritten address ranges, and custom scrubbers in several dozen GPU caches to pinpoint evictions of just those address ranges. The best thing is, as a game developer, when you read from the SSD, you don't need to know
Where's my face cam?
don't even
Better.
need to know that your data is compressed. You just indicate what data you want to read from your original uncompressed file
Oh really?
and where you'd like to put it, and the whole process
Wow.
of loading it happens invisibly to you and at very high speed. Back to the dream. Thanks to all of that surrounding hardware, our 5.5 gigabytes a second really should translate into something like 100 times faster I/O than PS4, and allow the dream of no load screens and super fast streaming to become a reality. Having said that, expandability of our SSD is going to be quite important. Flash is costly, and you may very well want to add storage to whatever we put in the console. Now, the kind of storage you need depends on how you're going to use it. If you have an extensive PlayStation 4 library and you'd like to take advantage of backwards compatibility to play those games on PlayStation 5, then a large external hard drive is ideal. You can leave your games on the hard drive and play them directly from there, thus saving the pricier SSD storage for your PlayStation 5 titles, or you can copy your active PlayStation 4 titles to the SSD. If your purpose in adding more storage is to play PlayStation 5 titles, though, ideally you would add to your SSD storage. We will be supporting certain M2 SSDs. These are internal drives that you can get on the open market and install in a bay.
You still watching us, Liam?
As for which ones
Nah, I'm gonna be watching it later anyway.
they connect through the custom I/O unit, just like our SSD does, so they can take full advantage of the decompression, I/O coprocessors, and all the other features I was talking about. Here's the catch, though. That commercial drive has to be at least as fast as ours. Games that rely on the speed of our SSD need to work flawlessly with any M2 drive. When I gave the Wired interview last year, I said that the PlayStation 5 SSD was faster than anything else. At the time, commercial M2 drives and correlate that gap out at 3.5 gigabytes a second. Now, you say I use 3.0 drive. M2 drives with PCI 4.0 are now at the market, getting on 4 or 5 gigabytes a second. By year's end, I expect the drive to saturate 4.0 and support 7 gigabytes a second. Having said that, we are comparing apples and oranges because that has both architectures on flash controller and so on. For example, the NVIDIA specification lays out the priority scheme for best that the M2 drives can use. And that scheme is pretty nice, but it only has 2 priority ones. Our drives support 6. You can hook up a drive with only 2 priority levels, definitely, but our custom I/O unit has to arbitrate the extra priorities rather than the M2 drive flash control. And so the M2 drive needs a little extra speed to take care of issues arising. That commercial drive also has 2 SSD inside the PlayStation 5 for M2 drives. Unlike the hard drives, there's unfortunately and some M2 drives have giant heaps. In fact, some of them right now we're getting M2 drive samples benchmark various ways. When games hit beta as they get ready for the PlayStation 5 launch year-end, we'll also be doing some compatibility tests to make sure that the architecture of particular M2 drives isn't too foreign to the games we have. Start with which drives will and which drive samples have benchmarked appropriately high in our testing. It would be great if that happened by launch, but it's likely to be a bit past it. So please hold off on getting that M2 drive until you hear from us. Okay, back to our principles. Balancing evolution and revolution, as I said. This was definitely a recurring theme. We need new GPU features and capabilities, and we only have more than one. We're not really a new generation. Of course, that's part of what PlayStation 5 Teraflop is all about. But we aren't just looking for performance. We do something with the GPU that could not have been done. Every time we double the performance of some GPU component, we don't want to find out we double the power of the system. But at the same time, we have to make sure the GPU can run PS4. And we have to ensure that the architecture is easy for the developers to perform. Now, backwards compatibility is handled masterfully by AMD. As our solution to adding new features without blocking development, we made sure that if there were new significant features, it would be optional to use. The GPU supports ray tracing. You don't have to use ray tracing. The GPU supports primitive shaders, but you can release your first game on PlayStation 5 without them. Before I get into the capabilities of the GPU, I'd like to make clear 2 points that are quite key. RDNA 2 technology. What does that mean?
I have no idea.
RDNA 2 runs to reduce power consumption by the architect data close to Earth, to optimize and to add a more advanced features. But that feature set value, which is to say we have our own needs for PlayStation and active collaboration to what the PLC roadmap becomes. So collaboration is born. If we bring concepts to AMD and develop they can be adopted into RDNA 2 and used broadly in the PC. The ideas are sufficiently specific, like the GPU cache scrolls I was talking about, that they end up being just mirrors. If you see a similar discrete GPU available as a PC part at roughly the same time as we release a console, that means collaboration with AMD succeeded. In producing technology useful in both worlds, it doesn't mean that we assume a simple incorporated PC part. This continuous improvement in AMD technology means it's dangerous to rely on teraflops as absolute indicator of performance, and CPU count should be avoided as well. In the case of CPUs, we all understand this. The PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 each have 8 CPUs. We never think that their capabilities and performance. It's the same for CPUs. They are getting much larger. Adding new features is adding lots of transistors. In fact, the transistor count for a PlayStation 5 CPU is 62% larger than the transistor count for a PlayStation 4 CPU. Second, having PlayStation 5 GPU is backwards. One way to achieve backwards is one small chipset console, like we did with some PlayStation 3s. That's, of course, extremely expensive. A better way to make differences in the way this console logic into consoles, meaning that even as the technology evolves, the logic and feature set
Leon?
PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro
They might have just teased that backwards compatibility will have the PS4 on it.
one advantage of this strategy is that once
Because it says, like, backwards compatibility PS4 Pro and the PlayStation 4 and the PS5 in itself.
achieving this
So whatever PS5 game you can get, you can put in the PS4.
No, it's the other way around. Whatever PS4 games you get, you can keep in your PS5.
So basically that means that you can buy PS4 games off the PS5 store. You know, using PS Now just for completely free. No, like paying like things for.
That means it's not possible to do basic optimizations, such as importing processing vertex in all geometry that uses PlayStation 5 has a new unit called Geometry Engine, which brings handling, triangles, and other primitives under full programmatic control. As a game developer, it's free to ignore its existence and use the PlayStation 5 machine as a simple usage could be performance optimization, such as removing backface or off-screen vertices. More complex usage involves something called primitive shaders, which allow the game to synthesize geometry on the fly as it's moving. It's a brand new capability. Using primitive shaders on PlayStation 5 will allow for a broad variety of techniques, including smoothly varying level of detail, addition of procedural detail to close-up objects, and improvements to particle effects and other visual special effects. Another major new feature of our custom RDNA 2-based GPU is ray tracing, using the same strategy as AMD's upcoming PC GPU. The CUs contain a new specialized unit called intersection engine, which can calculate the intersection of rays with boxes and triangles. To use the intersection engine, first you build what is called an acceleration structure. It's data in RAM that contains all of your geometry. There's a specific set of formats you can use. They're variations on the same BPH concept. Then, in your shader program, you use a new instruction that asks the intersection engine to check array against the BPH. While the intersection engine is processing the requested ray triangle or ray box intersections, the shaders are free to do other work. Having said that, the ray tracing instruction is pretty memory intensive, so it's a good mix with logic type of code. There's of course no need to use ray tracing. PS4 graphics engines will run just fine on PlayStation 5, but it presents an opportunity for those interested. I'm thinking it'll take less than 2 frames a second to have a that should be tracing could take billions. How far can we go? I'm starting to get quite bullish. I've already seen a PlayStation 5 title that's successfully using ray tracing based reflections in complex animated scenes with only modest costs.
Wait, is that maybe a key for Marvel Spider-Man?
Well, I hope the graphics are good so I can defeat.
Because he said cutscenes there.
The chip has a cost and there's a
That's
cost.
No, I hope the graphics are good so I can fight Mysterio in 5K or something.
In general, I like running the GPU at high
He was leaked, by the way, remember? So is the Goblin in the MCU in the game.
configurations for a GPU roughly of the level of the PlayStation 4 Pro. This is a thought experiment. Don't take these configurations too seriously. If you just calculate teraflops...
No, then you could take some seriously all of a sudden.
PlayStation 5 is especially challenging because the CPU supports 256-bit native instructions that consume a lot of power. These are great here and there, but presumably only minimally needed. Or are they? If we plan for major 256-bit instruction usage, we need to set the CPU clock substantially lower or noticeably increase the size of the power supply and RAM. So, after much discussion, we decided to go with a very different direction on PlayStation 5. We built a GPU with 36 CUs Mind you, RDNA 2 CUs are large. Each has 62% more transistors than the CPUs we were using on PlayStation 4. So, if we compare transistor counts, 36 RDNA 2 CUs equates to roughly fairly sizable. And we went with a variable frequency strategy for PlayStation 5, which is to say, we continuously run the GPU and CPU in boost mode. We supply a generous amount of electrical power, and then increase the frequency of GPU and CPU until they reach the capabilities of the system's cooling solution. It's a completely different paradigm. Rather than running at constant frequency and letting power vary based on the workload, we run at essentially constant power and let the frequency vary based on the workload. We then tackle the engineering challenge of a cost-effective and high-performance cooling solution designed for that specific power level. In some ways, it becomes a simpler problem because there are no more unknowns. There's no need to guess what power consumption the worst-case game might have. As for the details of the cooling solution, we're saving them for our teardown. I think you'll be quite happy with what the engineering team came up with. So, how fast can we run the GPU and CPU with this strategy? The simplest approach would be to look at the actual temperature of the silicon die and throttle the frequency on that basis. But that won't work. It fails to create a consistent...
I wonder what the chat's like right now.
It wouldn't do to run a console slower simply because it was in a hot room. So rather than look at the actual temperature of the silicon die, we look at the activities that the GPU and CPU are performing and set the frequencies on that basis, which makes everything deterministic and repeatable. While we're at it, we also use AMD's SmartShift technology and send any unused power from the CPU to the GPU so it can squeeze out a few more pixels.
Liam, there's arguments about that. Oh no.
Quite large.
Oh no, there's arguments about it.
Gigahertz was looking like
what does that mean?
reachable target with the old fixed
Oh
frequency
no.
strategy. With this new paradigm,
No, we're
we're
gonna
able to
get
run
cut
way
from
over
this
that.
stream.
We have to cap the GPU frequency
That's right,
at
Chad.
2.23 gigahertz so that we can guarantee that the on-chip logic operates properly. 36 CUs at 2.23 gigahertz is 10.3 teraflops, and we expect the GPU to spend most of its time at or close to that frequency and performance. Similarly, running the CPU at 3 gigahertz was causing headaches with the old strategy. But now we can run it
Causing headaches with the old strategy. What does that guy
spends
even
most
mean?
of its time at that frequency. That doesn't mean all games will be running at 2.23 gigahertz and 3.5 gigahertz. When that worst-case game arrives, it will run at a lower clock speed, but not too much lower. To reduce power by 10%, it only takes a couple of percent reduction in frequency, so I'd expect any downclocking to be pretty minor. All things considered, the change to a variable frequency approach will show significant gains for PlayStation gamers. The final of our 3 principles was about finding new dreams. It's important for us on the hardware team to find new ways to expand our gaming gaming, and that's what led us to a focus on 3D audio. As players, we experience the game through the visuals, through audio, and through the...
Well, you're a player. You're the just
rumble or haptics. Personally, I feel a game is just dead without audio. Visuals are, of course, important, but the impact of audio is huge as well. At the same time, the audio team on a game project has to do a lot with a little. For example, on PlayStation 4, there's fierce competition for the Jaguar CPU cores. Audio typically ends up getting just a fraction of a core. That's not much of a computational resource, particularly when you consider that visuals run at 60 frames a second, but audio processing needs to happen at almost 200 times a second. So, it's been tough going making forward progress on audio with PlayStation 4, particularly when PlayStation 3 was such a beast when it came to audio. The SPUs in Cell were almost a perfect device for audio rendering. Simple pipelined algorithms could really take advantage of asynchronous DMA and frequently reached 100% utilization of the floating point unit. There's unfortunately nothing comparable on PlayStation 4. Probably the most dramatic progress in the PlayStation 4 generation has been with virtual reality.
Wait, virtual reality.
Our hardware has its own audio unit. It supports about 50 pretty decent 3D sound sources. And this provided a hint as to where we could go with audio, as well as some valuable experience. Not to oversimplify, but here were our goals for audio on PlayStation 5. The first goal was great audio for everyone, not just VR users or soundbar owners or headphone users. That meant audio had to be part of the console.
I'm back.
The second goal was to support hundreds of sound sources. We didn't want developers to have to pick and choose what sounds would get 3D effects and which wouldn't. We wanted every sound in the game to have dimensionality. And finally, we wanted to really take on the challenges of presence and locality. Now, when we say presence, we mean the feeling that you're actually there. You've entered the matrix. It's not, of course, something we thought we could perfectly
Hey Alexa,
the
next
idea
song.
was that if we stopped using just a rain sound and instead used lots of
Hey Alexa, next
sounds
song.
hitting the ground and all sorts of locations around you, then at some point,
Hey
your brain
Alexa,
will
next
take
song.
over and you begin to have this feeling. This
Hey
feeling
Alexa,
of real
next
presence
song.
inside the virtual world of the game. This has the capacity to affect your appreciation of the game, just like music.
Hey Alexa, play wrestling
The
music.
concept of locality is simple. It's just your sense of where the audio is coming from. To the right of you, behind you, above you. This can immerse you further in the game, and it can also directly enhance the gameplay. To use Dead Space as an example, I know, old school. You're fighting enemies in fairly dark, spooky locations. Back in the day, if you played the game using the TV speakers, you could tell that there was one last enemy growling and hunting you down, but it was difficult to tell quite where that enemy was. With headphones, you could tell that the enemy was somewhere on the right, which let you deduce, if you couldn't see it, that it must be somewhere behind and to your right. But with 3D audio with good locality, the idea is you know the enemy is precisely there, and you turn and you take it out.
Hey Alexa,
How do we
stop.
know where a sound is coming from in the first
Hey
place?
Alexa, play wrestling
All
music.
those bumps and folds in the theater have a meaning, evolutionarily speaking. Based on what direction the sound is coming from, sound waves bounce around inside the ear, there's some constructive and destructive interference, and the result is a change in volume. The phase of the sound also shifts, depending on what path the sound wave took to reach the ear canal. These volume changes and phase shifts are different for each direction and also vary depending on the frequency of the sound. Head size and head shape also impact the sound in a
Hey
similar
Alexa,
fashion.
stop.
The way that the sound changes based on
Hey Alexa, play wrestling music.
is a table called the head-related transfer function, or HRTF. Here's part of one. The vertical axis is the frequency. The horizontal axis is the direction, front, back, left, right, and the color gives the degree of attenuation of the sound at that frequency. The HRTF is as unique to an individual as a fingerprint is. In fact, you're looking at mine right now. Here's how we measure the HRTF. We've taken hundreds of people through this process. We put a microphone in the subject's left and right ear canals, and then sit the subject down in the middle of an array of 22 speakers. We then play an audio sweep from each speaker as we rotate the subject. In the course of 10 or 20 minutes, we're able to sample the HRTF at over 1,000 locations. Using an HRTF when rendering audio creates unparalleled quality, but it's computationally expensive. The simplest way to use an HRTF is to process a sound source to make it appear as if it's coming from one of those 1,000 locations we sampled. Unfortunately, the processing has to be done in frequency domain rather than time domain, so there's multiple fast Fourier transforms needed for every sound source for every audio tick. That's a lot of golden points. This computational complexity was the determining factor for our strategy. It meant we had to bite the bullet and design and build a custom hardware unit for 3D audio. Collectively, we're referring to the hardware unit and the proprietary algorithms we run on it as Tempest 3D Audio Tech. The meaning of 3D audio and technology should be pretty obvious here. As for Tempest, I feel it really reflects our goals with audio. It suggests a certain intensity of experience and also hints at your presence within it. We're calling the hardware unit that we built the Tempest engine. It's based on AMD's GPU technology. We modified a compute unit in such a way as to make it very close to the SPUs in PlayStation 3. Remember when I said that they were ideal for audio? So the Tempest engine has no caches, just like an SPU. All data access is via DMA, just like an SPU. Our target was that it would have more power than a CPU, thanks to the parallelism that a GPU can achieve, and that it would be more efficient than our GPU, thanks to the SPU-like architecture. The goal being to make possible near 100 100% utilization of the CU's vector units. Where we ended up is a unit with roughly the same SIMD power and bandwidth as all 8 Jaguar cores in the PlayStation 4 combined. If we were to use the same algorithms as PSVR, that's enough for something like 5,000 sound sources. But of course, we want to use more complex algorithms, and we don't need anything like that number of sounds. It would have been wonderful if a simpler strategy, such as using Dolby Atmos peripherals, could have achieved our goals, but we wanted 3D audio for all, not just those with licensed soundbars or the like. Also, we wanted many hundreds of sound sources, not just the 32 that Atmos.
Alexa, stop. Alexa, stop.
Processing power of the problem.
Alexa, play wrestling music.
In fact, with the temp, we even got enough power
Alexa,
that we can
stop.
allocate some to the game.
Alexa, stop.
What's this, man?
Convolution replay,
Alexa,
and other
play
algorithms
wrestling
that are either
music.
computationally expensive or need high bandwidth. But the primary purpose of the Tempest engine remains 3D audio. Now, 3D audio is a major academic research topic. It's safe to say that no one in the world has all of the answers. And the set of algorithms that has to be invented, tuned, or implemented to realize our vision of 3D audio is immense. For example, use of HRTFs in games is quite complex. Before, I talked about making a sound source appear as if it's coming from one of those 1,000 HRTF sample locations. But for high-quality 3D game audio, we have to handle other possibilities. The sound source might not be at one of the 1,000 HRTF sample locations, so we have to blend the HRTF data from the closest locations that we have sampled. The sound source might be moving, which needs very special handling as that blend keeps changing, and that can cause phase artifacts in the resulting audio. Or the sound source might have a size to it, meaning it should feel as if it's coming from an area rather than a single point. There's also whole categories of approaches to be handled. 3D audio can be implemented using individual processing of 3D sound sources. But alternatively, ambisonics can be used for 3D audio. Ambisonics being somewhat like the spherical harmonics used in computer graphics. And finally, there's audio devices. The player might be using headphones or TV speakers or have a higher-end surround sound setup with 6 or more speakers, all of which need different approaches. That's a lot of variation.
Hey Alexa,
It's nice to have the computational resources of the Tempest engine.
Hey
But it's clear
Alexa,
that
play
achieving our
wrestling
ultimate
music.
goals with 3D audio is going to be a multi-year, step-by-step process. Having said that, headphone audio implementation is largely complete at this time. It was a natural place for us to start. With headphones, we control exactly what each ear hears, and therefore the algorithmic development and implementation are more straightforward. For TV speakers and stereo speakers, we're in the process of implementing virtual surround sound. The idea being that if you're sitting in a sweet spot in front of the TV,